say.
All right, back at it again. We were just off camera, we were talking about Samson. And so any other, I know we moved through 3 chapters really quickly. Any other remaining thoughts on the story of Samson and Samson's family, Samson and Delilah, any of that that's been lingering since last week? All right. Well, if there's no further thoughts on Samson, let's move to our next story, which is a series of incidents that will give us a little bit of a snapshot of the world in the time of the judges, specifically dealing with the family of Micah, unnamed Levite, and the tribe of Dan. So to get us going, you all know how I love my maps, but this is another time where knowing the geography helps. So this is our map for today. This is after the time we are talking about. This is more the tribes like right before King David sets up. So the Levite is from the tribe of Judah, so he's generally in this area. Bethlehem is fairly close to Jerusalem, which is in Judah. So all of that is around here. So this is where the Levite starts. When he walks, he is walking to Ephraim, which is up here. So this is where Micah is set up shop, is in this area up here. And then the tribe of Dan is going to make their way to the coast, and eventually they will take this little slice of land. So in the story of like Dan taking land, that's in this little piece, and you can see it connects to the coast. So generally speaking, we're going to be in this area more or less. So any questions about the map before we jump into the story? Alrighty, so let's jump into the story itself. The story opens with give me just a second. You all talk about your initial thoughts about what Micah is doing at the beginning of this story, about his mother and the silver. So give me just a moment.
He confessed right away. I thought that was rather odd. Why did he take it in the first place?
That was my thought also, is why take it in the first place? Then you're going to just turn around and say, I took it, here it is. Giving it back.
You mean the statue of the god?
Can you give me the reading that we were supposed to do for today? Where are we in this? I don't know where to open my Bible to.
Okay, we're in Judges 17 and 18.
Okay,
and
thanks.
Chris has put up a new listing starting with September 3rd that's included in the Northminster notes now each week. I didn't know either, Mary Ellen, because I had been out of town, and I was able to find a whole new listing that takes us through November 26th. So today is Judges 17 and 18.
Just 17, thank you. Okay.
It was a little unclear to me about Micah's religious commitments, because his mother gives him money and they make it, I don't know what the mother, I think the mother said, make it into let's see, made an idol. They used the money to make an idol of cast metal and had it in his house.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody seemed to say that wasn't a good idea. They made it into it. They had a shrine with an ephod. I don't know what an ephod and a teraphim is, but I've seen those words before. And one of his sons became a priest of this. And nobody seems to say, well, that's not a good idea, or what about Yahweh, or anything. So I don't.
My Bible has a note on it saying that there were evidently circles in early times, such as those in this story, where such laws were unknown. So
Okay.
evidently, even though that was the religion of the Israelites, it's still, there were people that didn't know about it.
And chapter or verse 6 says, there was no king, and every man did what was right in his own eyes.
Okay,
So
So-
that sort of excuses it.
You all have already touched on some of the main details of the introduction to the story. So what are, like, let's give a character sketch of this mother. What are her concerns? Like, what's her motivation? What is she a good person? Is she a bad person? Is she considered righteous? Is she considered unrighteous? Like, what are, like,
doesn't-
trusting your own gut and your own assumption, what kind of person is she?
it really doesn't, she loves her son.
Okay.
I thought it was strange that she felt so forgiving to him. I mean, she didn't even exactly forgive him. She just went ahead and loved him even though he had stolen from her. I think I would have had different feelings myself.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why she did what she did, because may my son be blessed by the Lord, so.
Yeah,
So one of the assumptions may be not that he stole it, but he found the perpetrator and now he has it. So it may be that he heard
Oh,
her, or it is
yeah.
unclear whether he stole it or whether he got it from someone who stole it.
Hmm.
in
Oh,
my
yeah.
Bible, it says,
Because
I
he
took
took
it.
it.
Oh,
He
it does?
said, he tells
Uh-huh.
her, I took it.
Yeah,
Wait, is my? Oh, okay, never mind. You are
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, yeah, I think, mother's covering all the gods.
It isn't clear whether he took it from his mother or he took it from somebody who stole it.
Yeah,
I think that was what my initial thought was, but it does seem like this son is not the most reputable guy.
yeah, you
Yeah.
think, wow, he's not
Okay.
so great.
Mm-hmm. But then the mother's reaction, okay, so there is details that are important that give her character sketch. So the mother is lamenting 1,100 pieces of silver. And she makes the comment in verse 3, I consecrate the silver to the Lord from the hands of my son to make an idol. So she is dedicating the 1,100 pieces of silver to consecrate and do something with it.
yeah,
But then it says his mother took 200
yeah.
200 pieces, not 1,100 pieces, and gave it to the silversmith and made an idol.
Mhm.
So this discrepancy is, or I'm read in the notes, it's not one of those like accidental things or like combining sources. This is actually intentional in the story. So what do you think of the mother when she dedicates 1,100 pieces of silver to be consecrated by the Lord and then uses and has 200 of those pieces made into an idol? Yeah, Larry.
Who's the Lord that she's referring to? Is
So,
she referring to to Yahweh?
do you all
And-
remember how to tell of who it is?
Well, capital L or small l and what else?
Yeah, so when it is capital L, small capitals for the rest of the Lord, or sometimes they will capitalize the whole Lord, that is God's first name.
Okay,
So she is talking to the Hebrew God. So may the Lord God of Israel consecrate this silver.
okay. But the idol now is going to be used as a deity to be prayed to as well. I mean, isn't she now raising another god? So she's being certain her son's gonna be taken care of.
So what do we think is happening here? Is she making a god, or is she trying to make an image of the Hebrew God?
It
Oh,
looks like she says,
I
I
didn't think-
consecrate the silver to the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
capital L.
Capital L, right.
Mhm, mhm.
So since the clues are pointing to the fact that since she is speaking of to and about the Hebrew God, this may be an attempt to make an idol of the Hebrew God, which we know from antiquity there are statues that they think are meant to be the Hebrew God.
Oh, okay.
Additionally, there is a point where people made a consort to the Hebrew God. Her name is Asherah. And it is thought that there was a point where the people went from being polytheistic to monotheistic, and the consort got pushed aside.
Hmm.
And so there is a point in history where this God, where in the text that we have says, no, don't make a graven image, likely had a graven image. And this seems to be somewhat of a holdover where there seems to be an acknowledgement that there is a statue being made of a god who says, don't make statues of me.
Okay.
and nobody is saying, I mean, God isn't saying, or no, anybody around him is saying, this is, you shouldn't do this. Nobody is. It seems like it's just okay.
So let's go to the line that Clay already brought up. Verse 6. In those days, there was no king over Israel, and all the people did what they thought was right in their eyes.
Yes.
Mhm.
What is your interpretation of this line? Because I've known people to take it many different ways. What do you think is going on with this comment? After describing making an idol, the ephod is the breastplate that had all the stones in it for the priest. So it's making a priest thing, and making a shrine.
Mhm.
And then it says the people did whatever they want in that age.
Seems to me there might be some disagreements of what's right.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's really nice they were all thinking of the right thing, but what's right for one is not necessarily right for another.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's putting an okay stamp on what she did.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a,
What he did.
Yeah, she had it made or he had it made when she gave the okay, plus he had those other things made for the priest. Like the apron and that this says it's okay for this time period.
So it's one of those that almost as a stamp or of an admission that hey, everyone was trying their best. This may not be ideal, but she was trying her best.
Yeah.
Good intentions.
Okay. There is the opposite way to see this, which is these people are doing the wrong thing even though they think it's right. These people had no one over them to tell them that what they were doing is wrong. And this is why we need a king, because the king will tell the people when they're doing things wrong.
Wow. Yeah.
nobody seems to
Okay,
remember
makes sense.
what the rules are.
Mhm.
What was that?
Nobody remembers what the rules are.
Mhm.
Right, there's no one acting as Moses. They don't remember the 10 Commandments.
Mhm.
So I've heard it argued both ways. The only thing that I would add is there is a bit of judgment that is on the mother because she dedicates all of the silver to God, but then appears to hold some back for herself, and the discrepancy between dedicating 11,000 or 1,100 pieces of silver to God and then only using 2,000 pieces, that means there's still 9,000 pieces unaccounted for that are the assumption is it's in her pocket. The mother is not looked at in a good light because of this discrepancy. So some will err on the side of people did whatever they want was like, they are being hooligans that are not following God, is kind of the assumption. However, I've also heard arguments on the other side of, hey, people were governing themselves. Why do you need a king? Everyone was doing what was right for them.
But it was her silver in the first place.
It was.
Mhm.
But remember, vows are legally binding. And so she vowed to God something and then didn't follow through on the vow. So in today's day, it would be like signing okay, this is not a one-to-one, but it would be similar to in stewardship season, pledging a certain amount to the church and only given about 1/10 of what you pledged to the church when it actually came around to give money. So if someone pledged a high amount to the annual budget and then didn't give it, what would be our opinion today?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, but it doesn't say what the mother did with the rest of the
Where does
money.
it say she kept that for herself?
It is in the subtext. So it's because I'm going with the scholarship underneath. They're saying that the hearers of the story would notice that she didn't do what she said she was going to do. She said she was going to dedicate all of the money, and she doesn't.
Hmm.
So there's no record of what she did with the rest of it, but the assumption is, since we see how much she spent on the idol, she didn't use all of what she said she was going to use.
Hmm.
See, I interpreted that she was giving Micah 200 kind of in acknowledgement to his honesty in returning the 11. And so she was gonna, there was her money to start with, and she was gonna use it to keep the family going.
Keep it there.
All right, whatever she
Mm.
interpreted as being the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So it's one of those, it is her money to do with what she pleases, except for the fact that in verse 3, she says, I consecrate the silver to the Lord from my hands for my son to make an idol of cast metal. It's the fact that she vows to use the money he gave her to make an idol. And so
Right.
it's that part where she chose what she wanted to do with her money, use it to make a cast idol. But she doesn't use the entirety of it, which is implied in what she says.
Hmm.
Every man did that which was right in his, I assume, her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
All
anyway,
right, but let's keep going because
Right.
there's still more to say here. So an idol is set up, a shrine is set up, and then Micah basically just chooses his sons to be a priest over this shrine. As Israelites reading the story, because once again, this story was likely told during the time where the temple existed, what would the readers be thinking about if you're hearing this in the temple and you're hearing that this guy, who is just a guy, sets up a shrine for an idol and just ordains his son as priests?
His son, I thought
Not his
he
son.
was a Levite. He
Hold on,
says
we're not
you're
at the
gonna-
Levite yet. In verse 5, he made an
Oh.
ephod and installed one of his own sons who became his
Oh,
priest.
okay, so this
Missed
is
that.
so the Levite is priest number 2 then.
Yes, and we'll get to the Levite in a moment. But to start with, he just installs his son.
Son, okay.
So is this a good guy or a bad guy?
Well, he's sort of starting his own religion, huh?
Well, he had a shrine. It said he had a shrine.
Mhm.
And he made an ephod and teraphim himself. What did he do that with if he didn't have the silver anymore?
Mhm.
But then he installed
Yeah.
but he had a shrine, so.
So
To
he
begin with.
evidently has enough money that he sets up his own place of worship with these symbols of the priesthood,
Yeah,
and he gives them to his son. And now he has his very own place of worship that is not the tabernacle and is not the temple, because the temple's not built yet.
Mhm.
So as Israelites, do we like this guy or do we not like this guy?
I'm not sure.
Well, he seems, he's not being bad. I mean, he's not obeying the law, but he apparently doesn't know the law. He thinks he's being, doing the right thing, I think. So he doesn't seem bad. He hasn't done anything bad except
Except
make it-
he's breaking some commandments here, some very direct commandments. He is not following the Torah.
oh, he's not following that part of it, but I don't hear him doing, going out and killing people like a lot of the people who do follow the Lord.
True. Yeah, Larry?
So is setting up a shrine in your house and having your own personal priest, is that a no-no in these
Yes.
days?
It's a no-no.
Well, if there is an established priesthood that was chosen by God, this is okay. We're gonna recall some stories from the book of Numbers. Do you remember the story of Korah? There's a tribe that says, hey, we're part of the Levites. We have every right to be a priest. And there's a challenge to see whose staff can grow, or like they put their two staffs and Aaron's grows. And then God sends an earthquake and swallows the Korites into the earth. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
No.
So based on that, do we think it's good to set up a second priesthood?
Yeah.
It's breaking the law.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so far, he's getting away with it.
Hey,
he is getting away with it. Yeah. Clay, what are you saying?
The notes at the bottom of my page say there were circles in early times, such as those in this story, where such laws were unknown.
Yes.
So this is where this can all happen. They're not intentionally breaking laws. They apparently don't know the laws.
So here is to bring up a dynamic. This is where if you remember Gretchen talking about the difference between the story of conquering, where the Israelites move into Canaan and they kill all the local residents and then they set up shop, versus an infiltration story where it's like they move in and they kind of intermarry into the population, and then the story of the Exodus from Egypt and the wilderness culturally takes over. The idea that this is an enclave of people that don't know the Torah jives more with that second story of that there's a group of people who left Egypt and culturally conquered the region, but not necessarily military, would indicate or would allow for the fact that there would be enclaves that maybe subscribe to the God that these people were praying to, but wouldn't be familiar with the 10 Commandments. If you go to the other story of they killed everyone and replaced them, that would indicate that they would know the Torah because they are the direct descendants of the people who like agreed to it. And so it's depending on what version of the story would be what kind of culpability you would ascribe to them. So, but why I keep going back to the Israelites and what they would hear when they are hearing this story, they didn't have the anthropology and the archaeology that we have today. They would hear this, and in the terms of the story, these are the descendants of the 12 tribes that in the story itself, at least, these people should have known better. So there's the difference between the conceits of the story, which these are followers of the Hebrew God, They said yes to the covenant of Israel. And God keeps getting mad at them because they keep following other gods. And here they are setting up another priesthood, another shrine, and an idol. Culturally speaking, yeah, they probably didn't know better. They probably like knew the name of the god and were worshiping them, but still had a lot of pagan practices, which is what we are seeing here. So if you can understand the two levels of the story, archaeology, yeah, Clay, 100% right. They probably didn't know better. Story-wise, in the story, the assumption is they should have known better.
Mhm.
So
You mean the story, the way it's written?
the story, the way it's written, if you're looking at it like a
Yes.
piece of literature, not as a historical text.
Okay.
So the question is, why would he want to set up his own religion or his own shrine with his own priest? Why would Micah want to do this?
Well, there are any number of motivations you can think of. One, prestige. I've got my own shrine and priest. Or second, geez, I stole money from my mother, and I'd better atone to God, for doing that, which probably wasn't. Everybody would agree that probably wasn't a good idea.
Yeah. So Clay, what are you thinking?
Well, that verse 13, I know that the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as priest. And the Levites, according to my notes, enjoyed a prestige above others and as priests. So he's putting all the pieces together. And the final thing is, I'm going to prosper because of all this I've done.
So that I think hits the nail on the head. So let's talk about why he wants the Levites specifically. So it is mentioned multiple times that people know that guy's a Levite by the way he sounds, which likely means he has a Southern accent. There's an accent differential that people can hear this guy talk and they're like, oh, you're from the South. And so he's a young man from Bethlehem in the tribe of Judah, of the clan of Judah, and he's a Levite. Tell me what you remember about the Levites.
They're the priests.
They are the priest, yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you remember about the Levites?
They didn't get any money, did they?
Close. They got, I mean, there's a way that they got paid for their priestly services, but there's something else they didn't get.
They didn't get any land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. So this guy is basically a resident alien in Judah. So yes, he's living in Judah. He's like from Judah, but being of the tribe of Levi means he technically has no homeland. The tribe of Levi does not have land. And this is the trade-off of their priestly duties. The entire 12 clan, or the rest of the clans, were supposed to support the Levites because they have important duties to maintain, but because they are involved with the temple, means they don't have time for agriculture, they don't have time for raising sheep, you don't get land, you have priestly duties to do. However, if you have a big clan of people, how many of them actually have tasks in and around what would currently be the tabernacle? Probably not all of them. So the assumption is this guy has lineage. He has the lineage of being the Levite. He is part of the clan of the priests, but he's not serving in the tabernacle, which is why he is just wandering around. So it's kind of like the second son of a lord. You have the title of the aristocracy, but you're not going to inherit the wealth. This guy has inherited the lineage of the priest, but he has nothing else to do. And so he comes wandering into town, and Micah thinks here's a Levite. Can I get him to stay? Can I get him to stay at my shrine and be my priest? How does his little shrine change in status from having just his sons as priest versus bringing in this random Levite to be a priest for him? What changes?
More prestige.
Legitimate. All right.
Prestige? So what else?
Doesn't he have a better connection with God?
Okay. Yeah, this is actually the proper dude who's supposed to be in this position. So God might actually talk to me better.
Mhm.
And he's going to pay him.
Yeah, so Micah's gonna pay him. So Micah's gonna support this guy. So basically, the
Yeah.
Levite has a patron.
Yeah. So he's really pleased to have him there. It makes him more kosher, shall we say. I mean, he's doing the right thing now. So he must have known the law.
So here's the thing. If you have a Levi playing priest for your personal shrine, it gives it legitimacy.
Yes.
This guy knows that the Levite will give the legitimacy he craves, which is the implication why he knows what he's doing is not necessarily on the up and up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which the last part of it is, if you have a shrine, people in the area will come to it. So it's more than just his family shrine. The idea is, I have the prestige, I have the legitimacy, I can make money on this. This guy is after power, is the assumption. So, so this is in Ephraim, which is in that like little northern area. We see that Micah is like, hey, I'll be a father, in verse 10, stay with me, be a father to me and a priest. Those are honorific terms. So basically, come be the priest in my shrine and you will be like a son to me. So he's kind of adopting him as well. So there's both like this adoption as well as this like, come be my go-to holy man. And finally, the Lord will prosper me. So what do we think about Micah and his scheme?
He's pragmatic.
Yeah, Clay?
Well, he couldn't have done this unless the guy had wandered into his area.
Yeah.
So otherwise it would have stayed as it was. So now that the Levite has wandered in, yeah, he's taking full advantage of everything he can get from the Levite being there, the legitimacy, the power, and so on.
Yeah, Larry?
Micah knows how to work the system.
Yeah.
How to take advantage of what prompted the Levi to wander in. Did God tell him to go there, or
Well, see, that's one of the questions in this story is, where is God in all of this? Where is God in this story?
Did the Levite know that Micah had the shrine, et cetera, et cetera?
Give me just a moment.
Word spread. And so that's why he came to the house of Micah. Yeah, yeah.
Makes a good story.
Yeah. It's interesting to read, and this isn't very long, and to take this much out of it.
I mean, there's a lot of subtle dynamics going on, is the thing, where playing out trying to figure out where the assumptions and where the politics are. It's not, some of it, the subtext can get lost in translation, and that's why I'm pulling apart some of these things. This guy is not depicted for what the people would understand at the time. This is not a good person. This is someone who is kind of conniving in a way. But the question is the tribe of Dan any better? So let's actually talk about the tribe of Dan.
It's a long story.
So the Danites have not yet been given a parcel of land. What we see is, I'm going to flip back to 2 passages to read some of the assumptions that the ancient world had about the tribe of Dan. In Genesis, we have Abraham's final blessings or not Abraham, this would have been Jacob and his 12 sons. So Jacob is giving his final words to his 12 sons. And to Dan, he says, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan is basically almost the same word as judge, so it's doing a little bit of word play there. Dan shall be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels, so that the rider falls backwards. So what do we think about Dan being called a snake on the road biting horses? And then in Deuteronomy, once again, Moses's final blessings or final talks, this is in verse 33, which is right before Moses dies in the scripture. So this is 33, verse 22. And of Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's whelp that leaps from the Bashan. So with those characterizations in the foretext, what are we expecting from Dan? What kind of people are these going to be?
They're going to be out for what they can get.
Sort of like Micah.
Get it. But the snake in the grass image is, that lot.
So the tribe of Dan was kind of had a reputation of being brutish. While the word Dan does mean judge, and so they seem to have this leadership role, they are seen as being aggressive and brutish. Oop, why I keep going in and out is we're testing the fire alarms today, so I'm gonna put myself on mute. And you all tell me, what do you think about this plan where they are going to go and explore? They send out spies because they want a piece of land. What do you think of Dan, the tribe of Dan, going about this?
But it sounds a little bit like when they sent out spies into Canaan to see things.
Yeah, it's been done before.
Uh-huh.
And they also mentioned that they have no inheritance. So they've got to find something.
Yeah.
However they go about it is how they're going to do it.
Why did they not get an inheritance?
It just says no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So,
well, they might feel a little resentful and make up for it by being sort of crummy.
Where would the inheritance have come from?
Yeah.
So the inheritances are described in a few places. I would have to look up for the exact verse numbers, but there's a few, or we kind of did flyovers of this because it's the text that it's kind of tedious to read, that it's like this place went from this place to this place and this place to this place, and this tribe had from this place to this place and this place to this place. And so it is described, I believe, either in Joshua or Numbers, which tribe gets which piece of land. And so Dan is not described in these things, which can indicate a few things. Number one, for whatever reason, they weren't given a piece of land in the initial handout. More likely is that this tribe developed over time, and so they basically created an identity that would be later known, but grew out of a different tribe and then existed in the Canaanite world and would have had to carve out a piece for themselves because all the other tribes pre-existed them. They would have to conquer an area in order to get an inheritance, and then was like written back into the story later on.
Mm.
So it depends what version of history you subscribe to. Either they just weren't given to it because unknown reasons, or that they kind of developed as a tribe over time.
They were not one of the 12 tribes?
They are. I mean, the tribe of Dan, like the first description I gave you of the tribe of Dan, that comes from Genesis. And so
Yeah.
it does seem to be some historical precedence for this tribe.
So, but they
but
still didn't
it's-
get any inheritance for some reason.
Yeah.
I would think they would feel that was unfair. They didn't get anything.
Right.
So let's make up for it. Go take somebody else's.
So what do you think of their method of, since we weren't given land when it was doled out, we're gonna fight for it now,
Mhm.
versus going to like the tribe of Judah and going, hey, we never got any, you have a big piece of land, can you carve out some of your inheritance to be our inheritance? So what do you think, what's our opinion if they chose the path of violence and not going to the elders of the other tribes and saying, hey, we never got any?
Can you think of an instance when that ever happened? I mean, it always seems everybody went out and conquered some other place, you know. Nobody got a handout, except when they were divvying up the land to start.
Right.
I
Well, they
thought,
might have just been a rough bunch to begin with, especially when they feel a little resentful. Well, we didn't get anything, so we'll just have to run our own show any way we want.
Mhm.
Yep. So notably, they don't try to steal land from their own people. They send out spies, and you all are spot on by saying this is reminiscent of what we've seen before in both in the story of Moses sending out spies and Joshua sending out spies. This is kind of just the motif. You send out spies, you scope out the area, and then you go and take it.
Mhm.
So what they find, they send out 5 men, and what they find is in Laish, there's a group of people, the Sidonians, which are, I think, assumed to be part of the Phoenician group of people. If I remember looking, yeah. So, oh no, it's on the Phoenician coast. Anyways, they're not associated with anyone, and they don't have protecting walls, and it seems like they're just they're quiet, unsuspecting. They possess a lot of wealth, but they have no protection around them.
Mhm.
So what do you think of this group of people? So they're just on the coast, minding their own business. They don't have any walls. They don't have anything protecting their stuff. They have no allies in the region.
Perfect victim.
They're isolationists.
Perfect victim, isolationist. Other thoughts?
Well, why haven't they been taken over by someone else? For instance, from the sea?
Uh-huh.
That was my first thought, was how have they been able to just be there and
Mm.
not be taken over yet by anybody? I don't know.
I guess nobody thought of it. Now they're thinking of it.
Well, society's changed too.
Mhm.
They just got too relaxed and comfortable, and so somebody's gonna swoop in and take them over.
So in a way, this works in some ways as a counterexample. When we've talked about before of like, why are they so violent? Why are the tribes coming in and murdering everyone? And I kind of indicated before, like, well, the ancient world knew a lot more violence, and it's a lot more dog eat dog world where it's attack or be attacked. We see a tribe or a group of people that's not attacking, they're minding their own business, they just want to live their life. And the commentator in my Bible says, ironically, Laish sounds like the ideal community Israel was meant to be. So they're depicted as the ideal, and but Dan comes in and attacks.
And mine also mentions, and I wondered about the Phoenicians, that they are allied with the Phoenicians, but the Phoenicians are too far away. help.
Okay, yeah.
I wondered, why didn't Phoenicia take them over? Okay.
Mhm. So instead, Dan just, once again in the motif, kills everyone, sets up shop, they rebuild the city. Let's see. Oh, before we get to that point though, we have to cross through Micah. They go through Micah's territory, which probably means they went up and around. So they come upon Micah and his house, and so these 600 men of the Danite clans, they have weapons of war, and all of a sudden they see a shrine set up. They have an altar, they have an idol, they have a priest with an ephod, and so they decide to take it. And so what do you think of Dan kind of just showing up, and they distract the priest enough that they can just take the stuff, and then they talk to the Levite and say, hey, do you want to be the priest over a family's shrine or for a whole clan? And the Levite says, you make a good point, I'm with you. So the tribe of Dan's just allowed to take what they want. So is this just the way the world is? Everyone is just doing what's right in their own eyes, or?
That's what,
I
that's what they said.
said there was a lot of anarchy.
So once again, I return to the thought of, is everyone doing what's right in their own eyes? Is this depicted as being a good thing?
I would think Dan knows it's not maybe the right thing to do, but it will give the legitimacy to their whole deal once they get where they're going.
So once again, they're just out for like their own cause. They want legitimacy, they want the power, they want the control. So like, we're gonna set up our own shrine because I see what you got going here, but I want it. So I want that. I want the legitimacy that you have.
Along with the land too.
Along with the land, right? So initially Micah comes out to defend what he sees as his, and then backs down.
Yes.
He notices he's outnumbered, and so Dan's just able to take what they can, and then they leave.
Well, Micah tries to defend, but Dan says, you better just shut up, or you're gonna really lose it all.
Yeah. I have 600 warriors with me. Do you really want to try to fight me?
Yeah. Yeah, so he just turns and goes back.
Right, so it's after they take the idol, after they kind of take this whole system for themselves, that they then go to the people of Laish, who are quiet, unsuspecting, and they put them to the sword and burn the whole town down. And in 28 it says there was no deliverer because it was far from Sidon, i.e. Phoenicia, and they had no dealings with Aram. So they have no one to help them. And Dan just kind of comes in, kills everyone, burns it down, rebuilds it, and sets up shop. And the Danites set up the idol for themselves. And so now they have a competing shrine to the tabernacle. So then there's like a little bit of commentary at the end. Jonathan, which is assumed to be this unnamed Levite that we've been hearing about, son of Gershom, son of Moses. Now here's an interesting translation choice. The tribe of Dan wants their Levite to have his lineage connected to Moses. Except this is considered controversial because this is considered idol worship and against the 10 Commandments. And so later on, the vowels are changed because you have like the characters that are the consonants, and the vowels are, in addition to it, it comes much later. And we know that the vowels were changed later on to say Manasseh instead of Moses. So it seems like the rabbis at the time who put the Masoretes were the ones who put in the vowels. They decided to change the narrative and distance Moses from idol worship and instead say Manasseh. So as we come to the end of the story, what are your opinions of what's developing right now? Are the tribes doing what they're supposed to, or are they starting to drift away?
I think they knew they were doing wrong. I mean, this isn't a good thing, what they're doing. They're beginning to know and still go against what they know in their minds. They're submitting to being human and not very nice humans.
Mm-hmm.
They are fighting each other rather than fighting other, people that are not part of, this is part of Israel, and they're fighting each other. That doesn't seem like a good idea. They should be working together.
So that's one of the fissures we're starting to see. Yeah, they're not, at least by the conceits of the story itself, as a piece of literature, these people are doing what they know is, or if they follow the law of Moses, this is wrong. And the leaders would probably know it's wrong. Historically, that's a different story. It may not be as cut and dry if you're talking about like, what's the history of it? But it does seem like these tribes are being bullies to each other. And the tribe of Dan's willing to be a bully.
And more than a bully, they were killing people. I mean, that's not just scaring them, but killing them.
Right. And so they're devolving into violence now. We had Samson who beat up the Canaanites, but now we see the tribes are beating up on each other.
They need a king.
They need a king. So Sue, why do you say that?
They established that having a king would make things a lot better. It would be a unifier. It would be a guide, somebody who would tell them what to do and lead them in the right direction and be strong and all of that.
You see this story as a pro-monarchy story. Look how chaotic things are getting. We need a central ruler.
Yes.
Okay. This is I discussed a few weeks ago, the rhetoric of monarchy or no monarchy is starting. And so here, Sue, I think you very much picked it up. This is a pro-monarchy story saying things are getting chaotic. We need a king. Other thoughts at the end of this of what's going on? Does anyone think that this could be seen as an anti-monarchy story? Or is there an argument for why monarchy maybe still wouldn't be a good idea at this point?
Well, I guess it depends on how much they like to make their own decisions and how much they think what their decisions are bringing about good results.
So if you're from the tribe of Dan, do you, in this story, do you want a monarchy?
Probably not.
No.
So why would the tribe of Dan not want a monarchy?
They can do what they want, even though they have selfish motives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they want a monarchy, but they're going to be it. I mean, they've achieved their goal now. They've got their land, and now all they need is, well, nothing said about who the ruler of the Dans are, is there? There's no mention of anybody.
Yeah, so we don't have like a chief or someone who's ruling the clan. But I think you're right in looking at like Dan's okay being having a centralized ruler as long as it's them. And they're putting steps in place to make sure that they have power in order to control their own fate.
Yeah.
Now, if you're the surrounding tribes, what do you think about monarchies?
Well, I think probably they would like someone to do something about the chaos and the killing and the Danites behavior, but you always give something up when you have a central leader, so it's probably they probably want it more than the Danites do, but whatever you call them, the Dan group.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
they must know that it's not, you have to compromise.
Ooh, one moment.
Yeah,
Did she say there's a committee working on the
Oh, they were doing something with the fire. Was it the fire alarm?
bylaws? Okay.
Yeah, they've been going off or something with it, I think.
They said they're testing the fire alarm system.
Yeah.
No one in this part of the story, no one is in touch personally with God. There's no communication. No direct communication.
But in fact, there's no mention of of God having any sort of intervention
Not
in
here.
any
No.
of this. Yeah.
Well, it's possible that they're going to at some point say if their behavior brought about God's wrath, but we don't know that yet.
And instead of in consulting, mine says that to inquire of God means that you're consulting oracles.
Oh,
Lord. Yeah, so yeah, no consulting of God here.
Who said that?
It's in the notes in my book, because I thought, wait a minute, it says that they inquire of God, but that means you're consulting sacred oracles rather, and
Mhm,
the function of a priest to do
yeah.
that rather than, yeah, directly from God.
Mm.
So what verse are you talking about?
Joanne mentioned that there is just no communication with God through any of this.
Right. They talk about God and they use the Hebrew God's first name, but God's not hands-on in this story.
Right, right.
So is that concerning or not concerning if people are doing all of this and God's not really taking an active role?
Yeah. Well, this is just the prelude.
Fair enough. Alrighty. Well, we are going to hear more about the Levite next chapter. I will say next chapter, specifically chapter 19, is gruesome. I'm giving you a heads up. This is our next text of terror. And if I will give forewarning now that feel free to come with your questions, come with your thoughts, because the next section is disturbing. And we will talk about it to the best of our ability. But I will be interested to hear what you think.
Okay.
All right. But with that, shall we close with a word of prayer?
Yes,
Mhm.
please.
All right. Gracious and loving God, there are times where, yes, we want to be able to do what we see right in our own eyes. We want to be the ones controlling our own fate. We desire to be able to act according to what we see as good and faithful. But we also know, God, that humans can be terrible judges of what is good, that we often need guidance, we need input from others, and we often struggle to hear other voices that have reflections on our actions and how our actions affect other people. So help us balance these two things. Be present in our lives so that we may be able to discern with your wisdom, so that you may be active in our life, and may we follow through with what we say we will, what we say we will do, but also help us follow through on your will and where you're guiding us in the world. But also help us to hear critiques of when we can do better, of when what we thought was best was maybe not the best for all, and help us work with each other to build community so that it is always a give and a take, and the bonds of the kingdom of God grow stronger and stronger. So I ask that you bless this group. Specifically, we lift up Mary Ellen for continued healing, for Joanne for her continued journey of healing as well, and just be with us all until we are able to gather again together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.